Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto had sided with Sand Village during the Konaha invasion part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button, check description and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Leaf to Sand. It was a silent night in the forests of Konaha. The village of Konaha was in complete and utter chaos, but the forests were peaceful enough. The 5-year-old boy forever shunned and bastardized as the Kyuubi, for reasons he could not control had vanished. That night, the Sandaime had been conducting his nightly viewing of the village via crystal globe, an action otherwise known as spying, when he had caught sight of Uzumaki Naruto standing in front of the Ichiraku ramen stand. He had then decided to follow him around a bit, just to make sure he got home safe, when suddenly, the boy turned and glared at him through the invisible one-way surveillance camera. Needless to say, Sandaime was puzzled as to how this was possible, but what happened next was even more curious. The boy disappeared. He wandered off the screen of the camera, and then he was gone. It was as if he vanished into thin air. The third did not waste any time in calling an emergency meeting for all Junin of the village, which ended in disaster. The more intolerant and ignorant shinobi who had lost family during the years of Kyuubi had called for a manhunt and had wanted to send Hunter Nin to exterminate the demon child, once and for all. And since the number of Nin who hadn't lost anyone to the Kyuubi was incomparable, Sandaime was outvoted in almost every way. No need to remind them about the fourth's last request to hail the child as a hero, no. They would never listen. In the end, he pressed for Anbu to retrieve him rather than send Hunter Nin, stating that Naruto was not an official shinobi and could not be hunted as one. Meanwhile, in the tranquil forest surrounding Konaha, a blur could be seen making its way towards the northern border of the fire country with incredible speed. This indistinct shape was in fact the missing child Uzumaki Naruto. But though the body belonged to him, the current occupant was anyone but. Who are you? What do you want? This brat was impossibly annoying, him and his damn childish voice with its damn childish innocence. In the future, the Kyuubi would learn to endear that damn childish voice with its damn childish innocence, but at the moment, he was merely annoyed. Is it not enough that he managed to escape that hellhole in a way that'll leave the village talking for weeks? Not mentioning how hard it was to crack the seal just right so that he could take over the controls of this body, and not mentioning how hard it was to run on 2 feet. Human, how ridiculous it was to stand erect. Always wobbly. Not enough speed. Not enough support. Who are you? Shutter or trap, you stupid brat. He snarled. I'm just a residential demon sealed in body by your fool of a Hokage. There's a demon in my body. Yup, he was the sharpest katana in the closet, all right. He resisted the urge to give the boy a few knocks on the head, temporarily forgetting that it was quite impossible, seeing as Naruto's mind was trapped within his current body, and in doing so, he would only be hurting himself. I'm a Kyuubi. What's a Kyuubi? What's a Kyuubi? Ye don't even know what a Kyuubi is. Damn. I knew I should have wreaked more havoc on the Leaf Village. Huh, how do you wreak havoc? What does wreak mean? What's havoc? Dear Lord. Listening to this kid was going to make him stupid. All of a sudden, he felt his legs weakening and control over Naruto's body wearing away. Looks like my hold is over, the Kyuubi thought to himself. Listen kid, he thought quickly, go north. Whatever ye do, get out of the fire country. The nearest ninja village near here is the hidden sand village. Go there. Why? Why did we have to leave Konaha in the first place? Ye want to repeat an incident like today? Naruto winced. It wasn't his fault, really. He just asked a boy if he wanted to play with him, and to his joy, the boy said yes. Then his mother happened to see the two of them and she immediately came over and dragged him away without a second glacé. When the other boy had protested, his mother slapped him. Naruto would have felt better if the mother had slapped him instead that boy. No. He thought slowly, I don't want to do that again. But that doesn't mean I want to leave Konaha. Too bad, Gaki, the Kyuubi said, once ye run away, ye can't go back. Hokage probably already noticed that you're missing and probably already sent people to kill ye. Kill. Yay, the Kyuubi said, thinking quickly, suddenly thankful for Naruto's moderate capacity of knowledge. Haven't ye heard of Hunter Nin? They wear weird masks and kill people who run away. So if ye want to live, go to the hidden sand. The older demon landed as carefully as he could on the forest floor with the limited control he had. I'm done with ye. Naruto felt a sudden rush as he was once again united with his physical body, but before he could even think of running, he fell to the ground. His feet ached, his legs burned, and his hands were covered in multiple scars and bruises. Apparently, the Kyuubi had tried to run on 4 legs, instead of 2. His heart was racing, and even though he didn't do any of the running up until now, he felt the pain of a 5-year-old that just ran 100 miles. He coughed and retched, all of them coming out dry, and panted heavily. He didn't want to move. He just wanted to lie down and. Hey kid, get up. I did mention Hunter Nin, didn't I? I know. Naruto huffed. Just, give me a second. Ye don't have a second. I didn't exactly do an ideal job of covering our tracks. So get up and get moving. We're almost there. Alright, Naruto thought, struggling to his feet. I'm going, he said as he limped his way through the forest. No, not that way. Go to the right. Don't ye know right from left? No other right. Yes, the other right. Don't ask me what I'm talking about, you stupid child. Not once did he think to ask the Kyuubi why he was so desperate to get to the sand village and only the sand. Not once. Sandame looked out at the moon through the solitary window of the office. The Anbu squad had failed. They managed to track the boy's trail all the way to the borders but fell short of capturing him. He just moved a long way too fast. Yondaime, he thought sadly, I'm sorry. Hitaki Kakashi sighed as members of his squad headed home. They had been so close to bringing him back. They had seen the boy. They saw Uzumaki Naruto running on an open plain leading toward the Wind Country. Naruto had looked back and caught sight of them in full Anbu gear and masks. Right at that moment, he had seen such immense terror in the boy's eyes that he felt a pang of regret, a feeling he hasn't felt in years. That look didn't belong on the face of a child. It was not the look of one who had been scared by a ghost story or the expression of one who was startled by something. The terror was raw and that face still haunted his mind. But then Naruto ran with new determination. He kept running, even after he passed the border. He was just that scared. Kakashi shook the image out of his mind, willing for it to disappear, knowing that by doing so, the image would forevermore be engraved in his memories. Oi, Itachi, he called over his shoulder, go home. It's late. It had been his first mission as an Anbu and the prodigy of the Uchiha clan, Itachi, had failed. It's daybreak. Itachi replied. I'll be fine. Kakashi said nothing, but threw a shuriken in Itachi's direction. The other effortlessly tilted his head and let it embed itself in a wall behind him. If you were normal right now, Kakashi said, you would have caught that and threw it back at me. He turned to leave. Go home. Get some rest. Itachi remained where he was for a while but eventually got up and left for the Uchiha part of town. Sasuke probably wanted to play with him. He did get grounded after their mother caught him playing with the Kyuubi brat. He remembered how their mother dragged him back from school with a handprint in his right cheek and how she told him very seriously to never associate with that boy again. He walked through the doors of the Uchiha main house and was immediately greeted with a loud and happy, Ni-san. So predictable after all, Sasuke was. Naruto ran. He ran, one foot after another into the Wind Country until his knees could not hold him anymore and crumbled under him. For a moment, he just sat there, the wind swirling the sand everywhere around him. Suddenly, a sob bubbled up from his chest and popped. Then another and another, each one rising faster than the last, until he just buried his face in the sand and cried. He cried because he had been afraid. There really were people in masks. The Kyuubi had been right. When those people in masks came, He had to keep running while suppressing his tears. Imagine, if you will, a 5-year-old child who has to train himself not to cry. After hearing the boy sob for a few minutes, the Kyuubi finally asked, "Oi, when are ye going to stop bawling, kid?" Sadly, the question only served to make the boy cry harder. So the Kyuubi tried another tactic. "Could you start moving, please?" he said, vowing that one day, the boy would pay for making him say that cursed word. It worked somewhat. Naruto struggled to his feet, wiping his tears and hiccuping as he walked. He had been scared. Naruto stumbled around in the desert for an infinitely long time. His speed had slowed down considerably since his chakra supply was exhausted, and someone as young as him couldn't exactly cover a whole lot of distance in a short amount of time without feeling the aftereffects. He walked until he lost track of time. He was very hungry and his throat was parched. Or rather, the Kyuubi, didn't even think to pack anything, which was incredibly stupid, but the Kyuubi had insisted that if he took anything, it would impair and slow him down. "Am I going to die here?" he thought sadly to himself. The Kyuubi had been silent for a long time. Maybe he was dead or something. "I hope not. I want to live. I don't want to die now." He fell to his knees, the sand burning his skin. "I don't want to die right now. I want to live." Strength and energy seeped out of his body like a river and he toppled forward into the sand. "There are so many things I haven't done yet that I really want to do. I want to make a friend. I want to find a family. Please God, I don't want to die yet. I want to live." The Kyuubi growled and paced around in the damn cage like the wild animal he was. The seal had managed to close itself up again and he lost mental contact with the boy. "Damn seal!" he roared angrily, fighting violently and uselessly against the cage door. "Ye wanted son to be safe and yet this is what'll kill him. This seal." The boy's temperature was rising rapidly in the heat of the desert sun, and wouldn't survive for any more than an hour. "Damn you Yondaime. Damn you." Baki had been doing his daily afternoon scouting of the sand country when he had seen a figure lying in the sand. Assuming it was either the dead body of an intruder or bait to draw out a sand shinobi like himself, he approached it with caution. To his surprise, it was the body of a boy. He felt around for a pulse on the boy's neck and was even more surprised to find out that he was alive. Quickly hoisting the boy on his shoulders, he headed back towards the sand village. It was warm where he was right now. It wasn't hot like the desert, but pleasantly warm and cool at the same time. Naruto opened his eyes slowly. "Where am I?" It looked like a hospital room and yet it looked so homey. The hospitals in Konaha were white, clean and very hospital-like. Wherever he was now, it looked like someone's bedroom with medical appliances. The bedspread and blanket were red and had flowers on it. The walls were painted a warm brown to resemble wood and there was barely a speck of white anywhere. "Are you awake?" He jumped and looked at the speaker. She was around her 20s and had golden hair and warm brown eyes. He looked at her, expecting her to scowl at him or glare, but she only smiled. "What's your name?" "Uzumaki Naruto." She didn't look like she hated him. Where in the world was he right now? Why did you bring the boy back here if you did not know who he was? He could have been a spy. Then it'd all be on your head, Baki. Baki listened patiently as the cage berated him on his carelessness. "But fortunately for you, that is not the case. I don't suppose you have heard the news yet." "News?" "Cage-sama. Our sources in Konaha have found out that the vessel of the Kyuubi recently ran away." "The Kyuubi boy ran away? You don't think that this boy is the Kyuubi?" Baki asked. Cage glared at him. "I know that the Kyuubi is in that boy. Did you not see his whisker marks? Those with demonic presence within them will have a telltale sign like that. Like Gaara and his eyes." "What will we do?" Baki asked. "What will we do?" Cage repeated. "We will keep the boy, of course. Why did you think shinobi like Gaara were created? Now the hidden sand village has 2 vessels and once the 2 of them receive proper training, the sand village will be invincible. He talks about his own son like a tool." At that moment, Mayubi Ayumi, one the Sand's great interrogators, came out of the room and closed the door. Well, he says his name is Uzumaki Naruto. He's the one, Kazekage-sama. She said, bowing. Kazekage smiled. Or rather, his eyes narrowed happily. What did I tell you, Baki? He said as he stepped toward Naruto's room. The Sand will have too. Kazekage rubbed his chin thoughtfully as Naruto told his story the best he could without the use of eloquent words. Apparently, it was Kyuubi who initiated the running away business and not the boy himself. But the Sand Village would benefit greatly in the future if they had an S-class demon living within its walls. And what the boy didn't know wouldn't hurt him either. Naruto-kun, you've been a very bad child. He said it that slow, deceptively kind fatherly way he had. Huh, you ran away from your village. Kazekage continued. Your Hokage has to eliminate people who run away, does he not? Naruto began to make an attempt at defending Sandaime. The old man had been kind to him all these years and he was the only person who did not look at him with those eyes. But then he remembered those Hunter Nin and lost quite a bit of steam. What reason could he possibly use to excuse Sandaime for sending them after him? Of course, all of what Kazekage just told Naruto was a complete fabrication. There were never any Hunter Nin as the Kyuubi previously predicted, only Anbu. Blame it on luck, but Kazekage was merely fortunate that his story corresponded with what the Kyuubi told Naruto. Then again, he was the master of manipulating the truth and guessing and playing off what was on people's minds, and Naruto's rather simple one wasn't much of a challenge at all. I'll tell you what, he said, as if he had just came up with a masterful plan. You can stay here in the village and become one of our shinobi. How does that sound to you? For how long? Naruto asked. How long? Kazekage repeated, smiling beneath his mask of cloth. Why, for as long as you wish, Naruto-kun. Naruto followed the Kazekage down the street. The hidden sand village was so weird and so different from Konaha. The streets were deserted and it was late morning. In Konaha, the streets were always filled no matter what time of the day it was. Had Naruto any observatory skills, he would have noted that the streets were empty for a reason. The place had been cleared in a hurry for some reason. Suddenly, he saw a person standing in the middle of the street. When he got closer, he realized that it was a boy, about the same age as him. He had red hair and aqua eyes with some kind of black makeup around them. Kazekage barely gave the boy a second look, never ceasing his pace. And was it just his imagination, or did he walk a little faster when around that child? I wonder who he is. Naruto thought as he glanced back at the boy. He has the same eyes as I do. This will be your room. It was a big room. Well, maybe it wasn't that big, but compared to his tiny little bedroom in Konoha, it was big enough. For the moment, it was empty save a bed and blanket, but would soon be filled with many things detailing Naruto's growth over the years. Thank you, Naruto said, still in awe that someone would be so kind to him. Thank you very much. Kazekage nodded and left the room without another word. As soon as he did, Naruto leapt into the room and began turning around in circles and circles with childlike joy. The pain in his feet and hands were gone. A good night's sleep always did the trick and it didn't fail him now. The pain of running away and being chased seemed to disappear from his mind. All he could think about right now was that he was far away from all those cold eyes and that he was safe from being killed for running away. Suddenly, he realized that two pairs of them were watching him from the doorway. Two children, one girl and one boy, both with golden hair and both who looked slightly older than he did. Hi, he said happily. To his joy, they didn't shrink back. The girl walked in with confidence that Naruto could never muster and said, I'm Tamari and this is Kankuro. She jerked her head back at the boy who was a step behind her. Who are you? I'm Uzumaki Naruto, he said happily. Do you live here? Yeah, I live in the room 3 doors down and Kankuro lives 2 doors down. Who lives in the room next to me then? Naruto asked. The two exchanged a look. His name is Gaara. He's our little brother. Steer clear of him no matter what you do. Kankuro warned. He trailed off. Though he didn't understand why, the way Kankuro said it was like Gaara was some kind of disease. Okay. He agreed. So anyway, how old are you guys? The three of them got along great in Naruto's first afternoon in the Sand Village. That is, other than Kankuro's obvious doll fetish he insisted weren't dolls, they were marionettes. And other than the fact that Naruto was given his first lesson in etiquette by Temari. It all started when Naruto said her name. Don't you usually add a suffix to the end of names, Naruto-kun? She asked. Why do people do that? He asked. To show respect. To show closeness. No one ever taught you. No. Naruto started and was immediately cut off by the start of Temari's lecture. To someone you show extreme respect to, add, sama, add, kun, and, san, to the end of names people you're close to but still respect. Add, chan, only to people you are really close to. Dono, and, han, aren't used as much anymore. Listen to the way people talk and pick up stuff from it. Got it? What's the difference between kun and san? Why don't we just use one of them? Did you hear a word I just said? Yeah, I did, but you went too fast. What do you mean I went too fast? You're just too slow. Oh yes. They got along just great. The odd thing about Cage's household was that everyone ate meals separately unless you happened to feel hungry at the same time as someone else. That was all good and fine for Naruto. He usually ate alone anyway. But when he went down to eat that night, he saw that boy from this morning eating his dinner. The one with red hair and black lines around his eyes. Hey, I didn't know you lived here. Naruto said to him. What's your name? The boy seemed surprised. Gaara. He's Gaara. He doesn't look so dangerous. Suddenly, he remembered an incident that happened a little less than half a year ago. A teacher was telling the class that one should not judge people by what other people tell them, and only judge them by what you know. But when one of the kids pointed at Naruto and asked about him, the teacher had said, "That's different," without even looking at him. Is there anything to eat around here? I'm kinda hungry, Naruto said, hoping to start a conversation. Gaara stared at him for a second before finally saying, I think Yashimaru can make something. Who? Yashimaru. My guardian. He slid off the chair. I'll go find him for you. I'll go with you, said Naruto. Yashimaru looked over his shoulders as he made Naruto his dinner. The two boys were sitting at the table and chatting. Well, Naruto was doing all the actual chatting. Gaara, the not-so-experienced conversationalist, was just nodding here and there during every one of Naruto's pauses. Part of him felt happy that Gaara finally found someone who wasn't scared of him. Yet part of him still felt hatred towards him for killing his sister. But when he sees the hesitant smile creeping on Gaara's face, truthfully, the happiness does outweigh the hatred. Before he knew it, 3 months passed. 3 happy months where he spent time with the 3 Sand siblings. Temari was glad to have someone other than Kankuro to talk to. Kankuro was glad to have someone other than Temari to talk to, and Gaara was glad just to be with someone who wasn't scared of him. He was quite surprised to find out that all of them were related and that they were the children of Cage. And yet through all 3 months, he never figured out why Gaara was so feared by everyone. Then again, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the closet. And yet again, no one figured out that Naruto had a demon within him as well, because he was a happy child, and it was the common belief among ignorant that demon children were usually dark and mirthless. But after those 3 months, Cage decided that it was time for Naruto to begin his training in becoming a shinobi. And since he wasn't a normal child, like Temari and Kankuro, and he didn't have an absolute defense like Gaara, he was to be tutored privately instead of going to school. And his tutor was a man named Baki. Naruto looked around him. They were in the middle of a desert, it was noon, and the sun was high and beating down on them. Just ducky. Baki handed him a small canteen of water. Run north until you find a flag. Then run back. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Aren't you supposed to teach history and stuff like that before we ever get to field work? You want to know about history? Go read a book. The worst thing next to a dead shinobi is a fat one. Baki said bluntly. Once you train your body enough and once you're ready to learn about the chakra system, I'll teach you what you need to know. Otherwise, the stuff you learn in school is a load of crap. Naruto mumbled under his breath, but started running north anyhow while Baki sat down on the sand to meditate. Why did I have to be assigned as a damn babysitter? He thought. I hate brats. But then again, he hasn't seen Naruto's full potential. Why? Naruto huffed. The heck, another puff, am I doing this? He ran for about 5 minutes now and he was already dead tired. Baki-sensei said run north, but what if he got off track? What if he accidentally turned somewhere? What if there was no flag and Baki just wanted to get rid of him? Naruto shook the bottle. Empty. He chucked it toward a nearby dune, mumbling harmless childish curses under his breath. Baki sighed. Maybe this type of endurance training was too hard. The brat couldn't even make halfway. But still, he needed to train both his body to adapt to the sand way of life, and it wasn't going to be easy. After an entire week, still, all he did was run. Sure, it was getting a whole lot easier to navigate through the desert and it was taking him less time to do it, and Baki didn't have to rescue him again, but still. What was the point? Then again, Naruto wasn't the brightest of them all. So today, after I finished running that entire course, Naruto said excitedly, Baki-sensei said we'd start something new tomorrow. Isn't that great? Amazing, Naruto-kun. Temari said through a mouthful of sushi. That entire running course is a training ground for genin. If you're already able to run that, then you've probably mastered the endurance of a genin. It's not that cool. I don't get why he gets a private sensei and we're all stuck in school. Kankuro mumbled as he shoved a spoonful of whatever it was he was eating into his mouth. It had a particularly distasteful resemblance to vomit. Well, you're just too busy playing with all your dolls to concentrate on training. Temari smirked. For the absolute last time. They're marionettes. Not dolls, get it right. Yay, sure. Temari replied, suddenly having a coughing fit in which the words, doll, could be heard indistinctly between each cough. Naruto watched the two of them as they argued continuously. The two of them seemed to get along really well. But what about Gaara? Why does everyone seem to hate him? All of a sudden, the teapot started singing, signaling that the hot water was done boiling. As he gleefully poured the water into the small instant container, Temari said to him, one day, I'm going to force you down and make you eat udon. Now that's that good stuff. Ramen's better. Udon's just fat noodles, Naruto said, sticking his tongue out at her, a gesture of which she returned. Nay, Temari. Naruto asked, suddenly thoughtful, why is everyone so afraid of Gaara? The two of them froze at the mere mention of his name. Don't tell anyone that we were the ones that told you this, Kankuro whispered, leaning in. But Gaara has the spirit of a tanuki demon forced into his body when our mother was pregnant. Really? Naruto asked, and before he could even think about what could happen, he blurted out. Well, I have a demon sealed in me too. There was silence. Don't joke, Naruto-kun. Temari said, trying to laugh it off. It's not a joke. Naruto insisted, it's true. I have a Kyuubi inside me. That's how I ran away from the Leaf Village. Well, I wasn't the one doing the running, but there was no way Naruto can be a demon. He's happy. He's nice. There's just no way. But he doesn't seem to be lying. Does it make a difference? Naruto finally asked. Will you guys treat me any different now that you know that I have a Kyuubi inside me? The two of them actually thought about that. They worked their 8 and 9-year-old brains to come up with an honest answer. And they found that truthfully, they wouldn't really treat him any different. Sure, they'd be wary sometimes, but in general, he was still the same brat that they knew and loved. See? Naruto asked, secretly relieved. Then, his voice grew softer and his voice took on a tone of sadness. The way Gaara is treated is the way I was treated when I was still in the Leaf Village. There was another silence. Then, unexpectedly, Tamari reached over and gave her surrogate little brother a tiny little hug. "We'll never treat you like that," she said, Kankuro nodding in agreement. The ramen was cold by now. The years passed by quickly and peacefully. They graduated and became genin, starting with Tamari, then Kankuro. Gaara became an automatic genin when he turned 12 and Naruto passed in an exam with Baki. Unlike the Leaf Village, the Sand Village did not have three-man genin teams because there were simply not enough Junin to go around. Ever since the Wind Country's foolish prime minister cut down on all shinobi funds, working to survive became a needless chore. The usual system was that each Junin would have an apprentice genin, and once the genin qualified for the Chunin exam, they would be paired up with two other genin, and one of the three Junin instructors, usually the best, would be chosen to lead the squad. On the bright side, each of the genin would be powered up because they had their sensei's undivided attention. On the other hand, it cut down greatly on teamwork. Of course, Cage wasn't about to just stand around while his precious sand village went down in ruins with the Leaf getting all their customers, no. Now he was even more thankful that Baki brought the young little demon child to him 8 years ago. Having two demon vessels would serve a magnificent purpose. "We're going to invade the Leaf Village?" Tamari asked incredulously. "But why? The Sand and the Leaf are allies, are we not? The Leaf has been drawing the Sand Village's clients since the Minister of the Wind Country signed that alliance." Baki growled. "We must take back what is ours." But, Tamari started, and then cut off. It was the Cage and the Sound Village's idea. And it was also his idea to send the four of you. That comment got the four of their attentions quickly. "Listen up. This is an S-class mission. You are to invade the Leaf Village in the next Chunin exam along with another team from the Sound. The four of you will split into two teams. The first team will attend with me as the instructor. The second team will take the exam with two other Chunin level shinobi. Your goal is to get up to the final exam. Then on the third exam, the second team's add-ons will withdraw from the exam and regroup for the invasion. Understand?" The four of them nodded. "Now decide which one of you four will be the one on the remaining team." There was a split-second pause. "I will," Naruto said. "No, I will," Tamari said. "No, Tamari-san," Naruto said quietly, but firmly. "I'm not making fun of your skills, but if you go on the remaining team, there's no guarantee that you'll pass. If I go, there's almost no chance for failure." Baki glanced at his student. Naruto had really grown up in an odd way, and his relationship with the three Sand siblings was exceedingly unique. He got along with Tamari and Kankuro just fine, which was expected, but the fact that he manages to get close to Gaara and the face that Gaara actually respected Naruto made him very special. "So the teams are decided," Baki said. "Remember that. And Naruto, your teammates will meet you on the day before the exams when we go to the Leaf Village. Understand?" He waited for the sea of nods. "We leave for Konaha in 3 days. Start packing." Tamari polished her fan lovingly before strapping it on her back. When she first became a genin and decided to have the fan as a weapon, she didn't anticipate how heavy it would be and consequently, rarely ever used it. But a few years later, it had become part of her image and she rarely went anywhere without it. Kankuro wrapped his favorite puppet in bandages. Karasu would be a major part of the plan, he was told. If all things didn't work out, then its pre-installed poison gas would enable their immediate escape. Only as a precaution, of course. Personally, he didn't like using Karasu as much as he did some of his other marionettes. But then again, Karasu was his most powerful and could hold the most weapons. Gaara stood in the middle of the desert, holding out his hands and mumbling under his breath. The sand around him immediately began grouping and swirling and compacting together into the shape of a gourd. Once he was certain that it was solid enough, he filled the gourd with regular sand and tried it on for size. It was insanely heavy. He had to admit, perhaps a 6-foot gourd was too big. Something about half that size should do the job just fine and should also be a lot lighter. Are you sure it's wise, Baki-sensei? Naruto asked his teacher. Registering me as Uzumaki Naruto. Wouldn't it be wiser to put some fake name? It would, Baki said. But Kage-sama said that the leaf never registered you as missing, and so as far as he's concerned, you were fair game. Either way, it's meant to cause them grief. Kage and his sadism. Naruto thought dryly. Never get tired of it. Aloud, he asked, do you think I'm ready for it? Baki regarded him seriously before at last saying, if we weren't planning an invasion along with this exam, I'm certain you would have become a Chunin easily. Naruto smiled. Thanks Baki-sensei. But what Baki said wasn't meant to praise Naruto. As some of you may not know, Baki has a hard time giving out compliments, something Naruto has learned over the course of the years. And he was a harsh taskmaster too. When Naruto mastered the Bunshin no Jutsu, Baki had wanted him to learn the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu through reading because he himself could not demonstrate it. And it had taken Naruto weeks to learn that, along with yet another technique, Gakken no Jutsu, a technique that sharpened the body's 5 senses. But learning multiple techniques at once had inflamed Naruto's thirst for knowledge, until one day, shortly after he became a genin, he simply read up on the scrolls in Kage's library. Thus, learning even more techniques and stopping only when the Kage found out, and though he wasn't mad or anything, he told Naruto not to go near that collection until he was older. Much older. Unlike the Sand Trio, Naruto didn't have a particular way of fighting like Gaara's absolute defense, and he didn't have a weapon that corresponded with an element like Temari's fan, and he didn't have good enough chakra control to master puppet no jutsu like Kankuro. He had 2 distinct styles. The lesser used one would be when he engaged the opponent in a fair fight. Then, usually, he would just wait for the opponent to waste up all his chakra and then pound the opponent through taijutsu, ninjutsu, or whatever technique he had planned in his vast library of knowledge. But he hardly ever got into a fair fight, so he never used it. When he was small and before he got kicked out of Kage's library, he read up a scroll on the most vulnerable and sensitive points on the human body, and he remembered it all. That eventually led to his second and more used method of fighting. His second was speed combined with the contents of that scroll. A fast attack in which he would strike all of the body's pressure points and cause a great deal of pain to the enemy. It was quick, efficient, and always worked unless the adversary was faster than Naruto himself. There were very few people who were faster than Naruto. The Kyuubi was a major part of Naruto's upbringing. The time he broke through the seal managed to leave a crack open big enough so the two of them could communicate. The Kyuubi was a permanent comrade and his personal healer, so he, too, usually returned from missions seemingly unharmed. But the Kyuubi didn't usually come out and was usually dormant because if and when they wanted to talk, it caused stress inside Naruto's body because the seal would interfere with the body's natural functions. So usually they only talked if it was absolutely necessary. He learned that lesson 2 years ago. When Naruto turned 12, he had a sudden desire to learn a summon but didn't have an animal to contract with. The Kyuubi had offered to teach him a summon and he had accepted. Which one was it, you ask? A fox, of course. It didn't take him a long time because of the fox entity within him. It had taken him 2 weeks to learn how to summon the most basic fox and a month to learn how to summon the 6-foot-1 with a contract if he wanted to teach anyone in the future. Temporary paralysis in his legs was an insignificant side effect. The moon was big and bright this night. Usually, a full moon is looked upon as a sign of fortune, but if it occurs on the night before a great journey, it could also be a bad omen. Naruto was on the roof of a random building with a great night watching spot pondering this thought when he heard a presence of someone appearing behind him. You shouldn't do that, he said, not bothering to turn around. One day you're going to actually scare someone so bad they wet themselves. He finally looked at his visitor. Gaara. Gaara said nothing, but sat down next to the blonde. They said nothing. It was what their connection was composed of. Long, but comfortable silences. You okay with this mission? Naruto asked, finally breaking the silence. Shukaku and everything. Quote. Are you really? Because I don't think I'd be okay if I was up for a mission just because of the Kyuubi. Gaara closed his eyes. The insomniac lines around his eyes were becoming more defined every day and were slowing ebbing away his sanity. Naruto saw that and knew it. He was also afraid that this mission would be the one that broke and shattered what remained of that precious sanity. What he didn't know was that he was also one of the few people that kept the sanity intact. I'll be fine. There was yet another long and comfortable silence. Finally, Naruto got up and said, I better get back. Temari's probably going to kill me if I don't get some rest before the big day. Later. Gaara nodded, making no effort to turn around and say farewell to Naruto's retreating back. They were both demons and they both understood each other. That was enough. Naruto slipped into the living room silently and was surprised to find that Temari and Kankuro were still awake. What are you guys doing up? He asked, surprised. Then he grinned. Excited. They nodded. This isn't an easy mission, Naruto. Temari said. This could be the one that makes or destroys the Sand Village. And it's all on our shoulders. She shivered in anticipation. I'm nervous. Don't be. Naruto said. You should talk, Kankuro replied. You're not the one who's on a team with Gaara. In fact, why don't you switch places with me? If that doesn't work, I'm sure you could switch places with Gaara. That'd be the best. Nah, Naruto said. Those two other genin are probably going to get killed if they're on Gaara's team. Trust me, the arrangements right now are the best it's going to be. Besides, we already submitted our registrations. So it's a little late. He laughed and headed upstairs toward the bedroom. Come on, both of you. Let's not worry and go get some sleep. We have to get to the Leaf tomorrow and we need the energy. Temari gazed at him. What about you, Naruto? How do you feel about going back to the Leaf Village after so long? Naruto paused, mid-step. I was too little to remember anything. He said, but I feel nothing for it and I have nothing against it. That's all. He tossed. He turned. He rolled over. Nope. Couldn't fall asleep. He sat up and looked out the window at the full moon. Oi, Baka Kitsune. You there? There was a slight stirring in the back of his mind. Then he got a reply. What's this? Sneered the Kyuubi. Don't ye have some top secret mission tomorrow? Get some damn sleep, ye stupid brat. Naruto grinned. He was as nice as ever. Nah, can't get any sleep. Ye talk right now, ye not gonna be in full health for the exam. And I want some sleep too. So go away. We got an entire day to rest up in Konaha before the actual test takes place. Besides, since when did you ever sleep? Since now. Ah, what the heck? What I want, Kuzo. You're going to help me during the exams, right? Healing and everything. Single quote. That's what ye woke me up at to tell me. Have I ever not fixed ye? Show some damn faith, little human. Naruto was about to laugh when suddenly his left arm flared up painfully. See, what I tell ye, talk for no reason and ye get hurt. Now go to sleep, you stupid child. Naruto smiled to himself and rubbed his left hand as the link was severed. The Kyuubi didn't show it, but he cared. There were actually more than 10 teams of genin going to Konaha. But since only 2 teams were expected to make it up to the final exam, only those 2 teams were informed of the mission. Each team made their way south toward Konaha separately on foot. Naruto's team was composed of 2 generic sand nins. One, Kurosaki Uematsu, had half his face covered in a cloth. The other, Nobuo Wataru, had his entire face bandaged so only a pair of sunglasses was showing. Both were years older than he was and both were about 2 heads taller than he was. As they entered the gates, they received their passports and invited to wander around the village. The majority of the Sand Genin took up the offer. The 3 of them were no exception. Gaara had excused himself to the hotel, leaving the rest of them to explore, in Naruto's case, re-explore, the Leaf Village. Temari and Kankuro headed for the BBQ restaurant. And Naruto, having nothing better to do, tagged along with them. After all, it had been a whole day and he was hungry. Team 10 had been enjoying their barbecue happily and without incident until the cafe received visitors. Foreign visitors. There was a girl with sandy hair in a purple dress with a fan buckled to her back. There was a boy dressed in black with purple face paint carrying something that looked extremely heavy. Then there was a blonde boy with blue eyes a few years younger than the first two. Their forehead protectors, though located elsewhere than their foreheads, all confirmed that they were from the Sand Village. Nay, Asuma, Shikamaru said under his breath, aren't Sand Nin usually forbidden to go to ally villages even though they are allies? Asuma remembers now why he brought them to a barbecue, even though Choji already quintupled his tab. True, but these genin are here for the Chunin exam. Which I've recommended you for. What? Ino exclaimed in the middle of reaching for a particularly large piece of meat. You recommended us for the Chunin exam. Are you sure that we're ready for it? Sasuke's team is going to be in it. Oh, then we're definitely ready. Ino said, suddenly full of joviality. Mention Sasuke's name and she's all over it. Shikamaru thought sourly. Women are so difficult. That night, as he lay in bed, Naruto thought carefully about this exam. So far, the 6 of them had been told everything Baki knew about the exams. For the first test, it was information gathering. The second was survival, and the third would be an actual tournament. As the plan stated, Kurosaki and Nubo would withdraw from the third exam and assemble with the other Sand Nins. All of them had to at least make it to the finals of the third exam. There was no need to tell any of the other Sand teams unless they, too, made it to at least the finals. But since that possibility was unlikely, there was probably no need to do anything anyway. He had also been told that all the Konaha rookie genin would be attending this year. And if he calculated right, they would be the people he went to school with in that brief year. Would he recognize any of them? Naruto held his left hand up in the moonlight. For some reason, talking with Kyuubi the night before had royally messed his hand up. Usually, it would only take about a night to heal and yet it still pained him. And he needed to be in full health for the upcoming exam. He rolled over, fully intent on falling asleep. When this is all over, he promised himself, I'll start working on some type of healing or numbing jutsu. Tamari was about to go wake Naruto up when she heard a sickening splotch coming from behind the doors. She opened it and saw what appeared to be the crushed remains of a flower pot on the floor. Full health again? She asked. Yay, he said, shaking the bits and pieces of hardened clay from his hands. As Naruto, Kurosaki, and Nubo headed up to the third floor for registration, they passed by the second floor classroom where a group of leaf genin were asking to be let in. Can they not count floors? Naruto thought, not even sparing them a second look as he walked past them. This is only the second floor. Learn to take the stairs next time, oh stupid people. As they made their way up to the classroom to wait, Kurosaki said, Naruto-san, we'll follow whatever order it is you need carried out. Everything we do will be on your command. Naruto nodded and glanced at her. Yes, upon closer look, Kurosaki was a girl. How embarrassing for him. Naruto glanced at Nubo, definitely a guy. The clock was ticking by minute after minute. And still the instructor hasn't shown. The sound team already made quite a show with the leaf rookies in. Quiet down you worthless bastards. Well about bloody time. Thanks for waiting. I am Morino Ibiki, the examiner for the Chunin selection exam's first test. He then berated the team from the Sound Village for openly attacking other shinobi. In which the Sound team made a rather lame comeback. And were allied with them. Naruto glanced around him. There was a girl with dark hair and white eyes sitting next to him and a boy with brown hair and an eye patch sitting on his other side. Information gathering, Baki-sensei. Naruto thought. Excellent hint. He formed a couple of seals then hissed out a Gakken no Jutsu. Immediately, he felt all his 5 senses increase dramatically. His sight magnified, his hearing increased, His sense of smell picked up all the scents in the air, his tongue tasted of the sushi he had this morning, and his hands could feel every single little notch and imperfection in the wood. Hinata, who was in fact the person sitting next to him, felt a strange sensation beside her. She glanced over at the boy next to her and gasped silently. He was positively on fire. He had so much chakra in use right now it was outrageous. Who is he? She thought, feeling fear for the second time that day. Naruto looked right and left of him. This method didn't exactly take up a whole lot of chakra, but it exhausted his physical body. He needed to find someone and start copying quickly. He finally saw something. Someone with a goatee and had the bulge of a Chunin vest under his jack. Bingo. He began copying the words on his page as fast as he possibly could, and finished in a few minutes. After he was complete, he immediately deactivated the Gakken no Jutsu and laid his head down to rest. Gakken no Jutsu was the perfect skill for this. After all, it can only be used in spying missions. He thought to himself, if you used it in a real fight, then you'd be much more vulnerable and susceptible to injury. He forced his head up. How are the rest of them doing? Gaara was using the third eye of Shukaku. Good. He caught Temari's eyes and motioned up to the ceiling where there were 4 mirrors stationed. Kankuro had already came back from the bathroom. He glanced at the 2 of his teammates. They each nodded in affirmation. Good. Now all he needs now to pass the first test is the last question. Now, he thought, just for the fun of it, while the Gakken no Jutsu lasts, let's take a look at what everyone else is doing. He glanced at the girl next to him and started. Her eyes had veins around them and she was copying off the same guy he was previously cheating off of. Smart girl. Weird eyes though. He thought back to a scroll he had read up on Leaf family lines. White eyes, pale skin, and the family symbol being a puff of cloud. She's probably a Hyuga. Interesting. He looked over at the sound team. They were cheating by listening to the sounds of the pencil. They're not stupid after all. He closed his eyes and heard a slight barking. Barking. Didn't know they allowed animals in here. He thought. The slight creak of the mirrors above him made Naruto smile. Don't need the Gakken no Jutsu for this. He thought. Morino Ibiki looked at the group of students. About 32 teams have already been eliminated. But out of all these teams, it was clear that the most confident teams were the 2 from the sand and the single sound team. They were strangely calm, very odd indeed. He looked at the clock. 15 minutes remaining. Okay, he said aloud, we will now start the 10th question. The rules for this question are that you must decide whether or not you want to take it. Ibiki said, if you choose not to take it, then your points are reduced to 0 and you fail along with your teammates. And if you choose to take it and fail to answer it, he continued over the wave of protests, then you'll lose the privilege to take the Chunin exam ever again. Naruto glared at the examiner. This man was a true master at manipulating minds. If he was taking this test for real in hopes of becoming a Chunin, he'd be terrified too. But since this wasn't the case, all he had to do was ride it out and hope for the best. He didn't care if he ever became Chunin. For others, however, it was a slap in the face. I won't take it. The man who was sitting next to Naruto stood up. Number 50, fail. Number 130, number 111, also fail. Then, as if a wave hit the room, a number of people began voluntarily quitting the exam. Finally, only 21 of the original 67 teams remained. When it looked like no one else was giving up, Ibiki finally said, and to the rest of you who remain. They held their breath in anticipation. I congratulate you on passing the first exam. Wait, what do you mean we already pass? A pink-haired girl with green eyes asked. What about the 10th question? There was never such a thing, Ibiki said, grinning, changing altogether into another person. Or you could say that those choices were the question. Then what were the first 9 questions for? Asked a voice Naruto recognized as Temari's. They were pointless then. No, those first 9 questions served their purpose. To test your information gathering abilities. That purpose. First, as the rules explained, success on this test is based on the whole team doing well. This puts pressure on each member not to mess things up for their teammates. But since the questions on the test were not the types that a mere genin could answer, I'm sure most people came to the conclusion that, to score points, all have to cheat. Basically, the premise of this test is to cheat. As cheating targets, we had 2 or so chunins who knew all the answers mixed into the crowd to help you guys out. As he said that, the 2 chunins waved at everyone. One of them was the man with the goatee that Naruto and the girl next to him cheated off of. But those who cheat poorly, Ibiki continued, taking off his Hittite, fail, of course. What his Hittite revealed a head full of burn marks, scars, and screw holes. If the enemy, or third party, notices you, Ibiki said, there will be no guarantee that the information is correct. I want you to remember this. Important information can be a powerful weapon for you and your village. That's why we had you gather information through cheating. This clearly separated those who did and did not have the right abilities. But I don't understand the purpose of the 10th question. Tamari persisted. But the 10th question is the purpose of the test. How about those 2 choices? Say you guys become chunin. Your mission is to steal an important document. The amount of ninjas, abilities, and etc. is unknown to you. Do you take it, or do you not take it? The decision to take the mission is what will separate the genin and the chunin. Understand? After receiving a few hesitant nods, Ibiki said, then, knowing that, I wish you luck in the future. Most of them were about to breathe a sigh of relief when suddenly, the window shattered and a figure rolled in, sticking kunai into the ceiling and unrolling a flag that read, the second examiner, Mitsurushi Anko. I'm the examiner for the second test, Mitsurushi Anko. Now let's go. She pumped her fists into the air. Silence. Tactless. Ibiki thought. She acts just like Tamari when she's drunk. Naruto and Kankuro thought simultaneously. Tamari sneezed. 63. You let 21 teams past, Ibiki. Anko all but snarled. The test was way too easy this time. Oh well, it's all good. I'll cut them in half at least in the second test. She turned her gaze on the genin, suddenly resembling a snake, a cobra, hood spread, ready to strike. Ah, I'm getting excited. She said. I'll explain once we change places. Follow me. They arrived in front of a metal wired gate. Beyond the gate was a thick forest whose trees sported trunks more than 5 times fatter than all of them put together and even more times wide. Welcome to the state for the second test, Practice Arena 44. Anko said, also known as the Akagahara, the Forest of Death. The forest extended beyond what the eye could see. It was also dark, creepy, and looked like something straight off the set of one of those horror movies Kankuro derived inspirations of his dolls from. You'll soon find out why this is called the Forest of Death. Anko said, eyes once again resembling that of a snake's. Now, before we start the second test, there's something I need to pass out. She drew a packet of papers out of her trench coat. You must sign this agreement forms. She said, there's going to be death in this one, and if any of you die, your deaths won't be on my head. Silence. Anyway, she continued, I'm going to explain the second exam and then you can sign the agreement. Then each team can check in at that booth. She jerked her hand behind her. This test deals with survival. She drew out 2 scrolls, one black with the kanji, land, and one white with the kanji, sky. You will participate in a no-strings-attached scroll battle. These are the 2 you will be fighting over. There are 21 teams here. That means there will be an extra heaven or earth scroll. To pass the test, you must make it to the tower with both scrolls. There's a time limit. This test will last exactly 120 hours. You're on your own, she said over the voices of objection. The forest is full of food. Just watch out for man-eating beasts, poisonous insects, and poisonous plants. She then went on to explain some of the dangers of the forest and what would eventually become some of their concerns. Now I will explain what will disqualify you. She said, face still full of joy like it was a hot summer day and someone just handed her a popsicle. 1. Those who don't make it to the tower with both scrolls within the time limit. 2. This is a team exam. Those who lose teammates or whose teammates are killed are disqualified. There is no quitting this. Once you sign the agreement, you will remain in the forest for 5 days. Last, you are not to look inside the scrolls until you are at the tower. The consequence of taking a look will be dealt to those who are stupid enough to disregard that. Once you exchange your forms for a scroll, choose a gate and get ready for the exam to start. Enko said. Then, she hastily added the following words. A word of advice. Don't die. Naruto sat on a rock and surveyed the teams while Kurosaki exchanged the scrolls. Of the remaining 21 teams, there was of course, his team, Gaara's team, and the team from the sound. There were 2 teams from the grass, 3 teams from the rain, Kabuto's team, and the rest were leaf shinobi. Kurosaki was back. We have a 10 scroll. She said to him and Nubo as they headed towards gate 23. What team shall we got after? Naruto-san. Go after a leaf team. Naruto whispered back. There's too many of them. They're like insects. What do you think, Nubo? Quote. No objections. Good. We go after leaf. Start. Once the gate opened, the 3 of them immediately dashed in. Where do we look first? Naruto mused. I wonder. Would Gaara-san have any trouble? Kurosaki asked. The only people we need to worry about are us and that team from the sound. Naruto said. I don't trust them. Should we check up on them? First, let's secure a scroll. Then we'll see what's what. Naruto said, nodding his head towards a cave in the distance. As they entered the cave, he stuck a kunai on the wall. We'll meet here in about an hour. Try and get 1 scroll. I don't care if it's an earth scroll or if it's a heaven scroll. The more we get the better. But don't challenge someone unless you're sure you can win and don't carelessly injure yourself. Got it. His 2 teammates nodded. All right. 1 hour. I'll keep the scroll with me. Go. Naruto headed over towards the north, east of the tower. Suddenly, he stopped. I know you're there. Get out here. He said. 3 leaf genin crawled out from under a bush. In fact, they looked very familiar. He recognized them as the 3 he had seen in the barbecue place. Ma, said the one with black hair tied back in an upstanding ponytail, let's see what scrolls we have before we start fighting. If we have the same one then there's no need to. Forget it. Naruto interrupted in disgust, turning his back on them. Your scroll's not even worth taking if you're not willing to fight for it. As he left, he heard the girl with long blonde hair say, damn. That's the second person who doesn't want our scroll. Kurosaki ran through the forest and came to a sudden stop. There was a team from the rain here. She knew she was supposed to target Leaf Nin but still, she could never resist an easy kill. She closed her eyes and slowly began engulfing the rain team in her genjutsu. She formed a few seals then whispered out a quiet, Kami no Kuro Hikari. All that was heard then was the sound of blood-drenching tree trunks as 3 people lost their lives. Meanwhile, Nubo was making his way back to the cave. Surprisingly, in the last hour, all he had encountered were wild beasts. No teams. Too bad. He really wanted to try out his technique. Wait. There was a team now. It was from the leaf. Excellent. He raised his arms. His bandages on his hand began to unfurl, revealing empty air beneath his bandages. Naruto wasn't that far off when he said that Nubo resembled the invisible man. The bandages began sneaking behind each of them. Then, without warning, it wrapped itself around their necks and gave a sharp tug. 1 team down. Naruto looked at the sun. It's been about an hour by now. He should be heading back to the cave. But he didn't want to be the only one who went back without a scroll. He continued his leaps and bounds, looking for a team, any team when what's this? It was a group. A very big group. 3 no 4 leaf teams and 1 sound team. I knew we couldn't trust them. He thought warily. But there was a power coming from that little clearing. It was a boy dressed in blue and his body was covered in marks. Naruto started. He knew those marks. He had seen them on the henchman of the man who fueled Kazuki's idea of a leaf invasion. That man's name. Orochimaru. Sasuke looked at his body. Power. Tremendous power was overflowing his chakra system. And it felt amazingly good. He gave Zaku's arm another twist and gave him a kick that sent him flying into a tree. Who's next? He thought. Who shall I destroy next? Now, he could sense the different chakra of the people around him. There was Sakura's weak one, Haku's unconscious one, and that Hyuga freak's strong one. But no. There was someone above that whose chakra was even stronger than that of the Hyugas. He looked above. There was a nin from the sand staring down at him. He grinned evilly. You up there, he called. Get down here. Sakura, and the other two teams of the leaf glanced up and saw nothing. But when they looked back down, they saw that he had landed on the ground with ease. It was only then that Shikamaru recognized him as the boy from the barbecue. What's your name? Sasuke asked, feeling particularly confident. This power, it made him feel like he could do things he had never done before and go places he had never gone. The boy stared at him, then shook his head, almost sadly. You've got to be incredibly stupid if you think I'm going to tell you just because you asked. Sasuke grinned insanely. Maybe I'll just force it out of you then. The outcome of the match would have been very interesting. Too bad a certain pink-haired girl interrupted it. She threw her arms around Sasuke and begged him not to fight. Don't do it. To his eternal disappointment, the boy with black hair whom that girl called Sasuke actually listened to her. Damn. Naruto thought as Sasuke sat down heavily. I wanted AF hash and scroll. He turned his gaze upon that girl. That wasn't a very wise thing to do. He said acidly. I could just attack and you'd be the one who's responsible for any injuries he might have. He sighed again as the girl's eyes grew wider. Too bad I'm not that kind of person. Just then, his two teammates landed beside him on their knees. What are you guys doing here? Naruto asked. I thought I told you to meet in the cave. You're very late, Naruto-san. Kurosaki said, head bowed. Oh well, we're done here anyway. Let's go. With that, the three sand nins disappeared. Uchiha Sasuke. Neji thought. A worthy opponent. Then he remembered that blonde sand nin. Too bad he didn't get to see his skills. That would have been very interesting indeed. Neji. He glanced down at his teammate. 10-10 and a very wounded and very exhausted Lee. Ready. He nodded. Let's leave. Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji made their way away from the clearing. That was just weird. Ino babbled. And that sand guy. Imagine him thinking he can take on Sasuke-kun. That's not what's really weird. Shikamaru thought. I think it's weird that his teammates aren't the two people we saw with him in the BBQ. I think it's weird that his teammates don't act like his teammates and they act more like his soldiers. But if you take the topic away from Sasuke, then she'd probably beat you over the head. Women. So damn annoying. Sasuke-kun, are you alright? Sakura asked worriedly. Yay, he said, panting heavily. How's Haku? I'm right behind you, the feminine boy said. He looked tired and a little worn out, but was otherwise just fine. Nay, Sakura, Sasuke said. What was the name that sand girl called that blonde? I think it was Naruto. Naruto. Sasuke thought. Aloud, he said, does that name sound familiar to you? Sakura blinked. Not really, she said honestly. Why? It's nothing, Sasuke said, but he could have sworn he heard the name Naruto somewhere before. What did you guys get? We have two. Earth. Scrolls plus R. Heaven. Kurosaki reported. Oddly, Naruto was the only one who didn't get a scroll. Then, as if he read her mind, he said. I was going to get a scroll. Really. But I got distracted. He picked up the extra Earth scroll. And since our little sound nin friends seemed to have misplaced their scroll, he said, perhaps we should give this to them. He stood up. Let's go. Dosu was tending to his teammates' injuries when he heard a voice say, guess you're not all that good are you? He spun around. Who could have possibly sneaked up behind him without him noticing? He saw his visitors and gave a little sigh of relief. The team from the sand who had provided for his hasty escape. The bandaged nin with sunglasses threw something at him and he caught it. An earth scroll. Another chance, the blonde said, before turning to leave. Don't mess it up, please. So what do we do now? Kurosaki asked. Should we head for the tower? Didn't that witch of an instructor say that we were supposed to be in the forest for 120 hours? The tower is in the forest. True enough, I don't see why not. What do you think, Nubo-san? Quote. Still not talking. Quote. No objections, then let's head for the tower. The tower was dark and dingy. It looked like someone hasn't swept the place in years. That was what Hinata thought when she stepped in the place. Of course, her team didn't care much about cleanliness so long as they passed. Well, that's it for us, Kiba said, flopping down on the dust-covered floor. Now we just wait it out. Akamaru. Akamaru. The dog was buried inside his hood and whimpering slightly. What's wrong? He asked. There's a guy who's really strong coming. Akamaru barked. He has the same air as the guy from the sand. Is he strong? Kiba asked. Maybe. What do you mean maybe? I can't tell if he's strong or not. Kiba said to his teammates. Akamaru says that there's a guy coming who gives off the same air as that creepy guy from the sand. Shino and Hinata started. The image of bloody raining down upon them was hard to forget, and now there was a guy coming who has the same air. They heard footsteps and saw the other team from the sand. Hinata recognized the blonde as the one who was sitting next to her during the first exam. The three of them walked past without giving them a look. Once they were out of earshot, Kiba whispered to Akamaru, that team doesn't look so tough. What are you talking about? Akamaru gave a bark in reply. That guy has more power than the other. What the did your nose die or something? What was that? You feel a demon. He's that strong. Your nose probably ran away or something. Lucky. Naruto said, we passed in 6 hours. I didn't expect that team from the rain to hold us off so long, but oh well. They've met Kami-sama. Now what do we do? Kazuno-sensei told us that we're to stay here until the last day. Kurosaki said. Stay here? It's worse than my room, and that's saying a whole lot. Kurosaki hid a half smile behind her mask. Naruto didn't act a bit like someone with a demonic presence in them. He was funny. Naruto sat down on the floor after some hesitation and took a bottle of water out from his pouch. He wet his finger, then drew a line of liquid on each of his scars he had gotten in the forest, careful only to wet the area skin that had been cut. Then, before her and Nubo, the scars began smoking and sealing themselves up. After a few moments, all the injuries he had gotten in the forest were gone and he looked like he just came from a walk in the park. All ready. Let's rest. A command his temporary teammates agreed on readily. They had made it to the third exam. Now their mission was just about halfway through. The Sandaime Hokage-sama had not changed in all those years. He was still that old man from 8 years ago, and he was the only face that Naruto recognized among the crowd of Junin instructors other than Baki-sensei, Kazuno-sensei, and Orochimaru. Only 8 teams out of the original 21 passed. Most of them were Leaf's rookie Genin too. Listen up carefully, Enko said. Hokage-sama will now explain the third test. The Sandaime then went on to explain the reason for the Chunin exam. About how it was a replacement for wars between countries. Not so. Naruto thought. There's a war coming soon, Sandaime Hokage-sama. How pitiful it is that you have no idea. When Sandaime was finished with his speech, and just when he was about to start on the rules for the third exam, a Junin appeared in a puff of smoke and asked to be the one who explained the third exam. I'm Gecko Hayate, he said once he was given permission. Before the third exam takes place, there's something I'd like you to do, and that is to participate in a preliminary for the third test. What's wrong with that guy? Sick-looking face, circles under his eyes, constant coughing, and a bit of blue tinge on his face all signaled that he had some sort of chronic disease. We have a bit too many people remaining. He said. The fights could take too long and we're limited on time. So anyone who doesn't wish to take the exam, please come forward. We're starting the preliminaries immediately. What? Right now? Asked Dog Boy. Yes. Right now. Naruto nodded at the two of his teammates. We're going, they said, raising their hands. You're Kurosaki and Nubo from the sand, right? Hayate coughed. You may leave now. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. This was simply too unusual. Those two sand nins were leaving even though they looked perfectly healthy. That blonde boy, Naruto, was it. He was acting way too calm about this. Two of his teammates were leaving and he didn't seem to care. What kind of shinobi does the sand village create that could be so heartless? Kabuto was the next and last one to resign from the test after that. It was expected. After all, he had voluntarily quit from the exams 6 times before. One more wouldn't matter. There will be no more retiring, right? Hayate asked. Since there is an odd number of people here, we will have 10 matches and the extra one will advance automatically to the finals. There are no rules. The fight will end only when someone is dead, knocked out, or surrenders. The electronic scoreboard will be the one that decides your opponent. Now, will everyone please clear the floor? The first match will begin in 5 minutes. Hey, you three got through it just fine. Naruto said, heading toward the staircase on the right along with all the other non-leaf genins. No thanks to you, Kankuro replied jokingly. Then, he lowered his voice. Everything's going to plan. Yay. Just be careful in your fights, all of you. The scoreboard suddenly came to life, spinning a bunch of names before settling on 2. Haku and Akamaiki Choji, please come forward. The former mist nin made his way back down to the floor. The self-dubbed Big Bone Boy had to be convinced, forcibly by his 2 teammates, and only willingly went down after being promised an all-you-can-eat barbecue. Get him Chouji, you old fat ass. Immediately upon hearing those words from Ino's mouth, Choji's eyes burst into flames. I'm not fat. I'm just big-boned. He shouted angrily, silently swearing to kill Ino once he took care of the girly-looking guy in front of him. Ninpou. Baika no jutsu multi-size technique, he shouted, inflating into a human balloon. He stuck his legs, arms, and head into his clothing like a turtle in its shell and began rolling. Useless. Sakura thought. That kind of speed won't get you anywhere near Haku-san. His speed is even more impressive than Sasuke-kun. Sure enough, all Haku had to do was dodge from the rolling meatball. And if he ever got cornered, he simply jumped, landed a step on the rolling Choji, and escaped to the other side of the room. He didn't even get a chance to use his needles yet. Shikamaru slapped his forehead. This match took a bit of brains to win and Choji's lack of brainpower would be what cost him this match. Oi, I'm a show dizshi. Choji mumbled incoherently, swaying from side to side before falling on the ground. Haku didn't even get a chance to use his Senbon acupuncture needles. Akamaiki Choji is unable to battle. Winner, Haku. Ino said, bringing her hand up to her face. Choji, you were so close. At least he didn't get hurt. Shikamaru said as Asuma hauled Choji up the stairs. He just fell asleep out of dizziness. Sheesh. His opponent wasn't even trying. Haku. Naruto thought. His clothing is odd. It's not from the leaf. It looks like something the Mist Shinobi wore that time. I wonder. Next match, Akado Yoroi and Hyuga Neji. Please come down. The next 2 contenders faced each other. You may begin. They immediately dashed forward, Neji with his Byakugan activated and Yoroi with his hands outstretched. Neji managed to land one blow on him before Yoroi grabbed his wrists. Then, Neji felt the odd sensation of chakra being drained by his opponent. What the? He managed to break away from Yoroi who looked extremely pleased with himself. He can absorb chakra, Neji thought, rubbing his wrist lightly. Well then. He dashed forward, intent on another close contact round. Yoroi, try as he may, couldn't get close enough to get a grasp on him, so he settled for exchanging punches. The problem was that Yoroi knew that Neji's punches were hurting him a lot more than his was hurting Neji. Finally, he saw an opportunity. Neji had finally left his head unprotected, a big mistake. He immediately made a grab for Neji's forehead. Once his hand touched the headband, he said confidently, "You're mine." He waited for a moment, but felt no rush of power. He looked down and his hands were still around Neji's forehead. Why couldn't he feel any power? Why? "I've closed the tenketsus in your hand," Neji said from underneath him. "You can't release nor can you absorb chakra." "What? And now," Neji said, "you will lose this match, just as you were intended to from the start." Without his chakra draining ability, Yoroi was just another shinobi. And since he was at a disadvantage against the Hyuga genius, you can easily guess how the match turns out. "Winner, Neji," Hayate said, motioning quickly for medic nins. The Hyuga had shown absolutely no mercy. He had attacked the internal organs with precision and didn't hold back, even just a little bit. Yoroi wouldn't be able to use his arms or legs for a long time. Hyuga Neji. The Hyuga family clan is the oldest and most noble one in Konaha. "That's what Kazukage's scrolls said," said Naruto. "They're also a pain in the on the battlefield unless you're fighting with them." Hyuga. Neji. Next to him, Gaara gave a small, sardonic laugh. "Another opponent worth fighting." Naruto looked surprised. Then, he smiled in the same terrifying manner as Gaara. Yay. The scoreboard came back to life and started zipping through names again, one by one. Finally it settled on two. Gaara of the sand and Abumi Zaku of the sound. How boring, Naruto thought. This match is already decided before it even begins. Zaku gritted his teeth. He had heard of this Gaara. He had been told by Orochimaru-sama to stay out of his way. But he had also been told to get to the third exam by any means necessary. He glanced down at his arm. It was still injured from when that Sasuke bastard dislocated them. Damn, he thought. This is bad. He raised his good arm and sent a blast of air towards the moody-looking Gaara. His blast never connected. The sand deflected it completely. "Is that all?" Gaara asked apathetically. "Too bad." The sand that had protected Gaara suddenly began spiraling towards Zaku, traveling on the airwaves. Zaku quickly stopped the wind blasts only to have the sand fall on the floor and begin making its way toward him. He jumped back several feet until the sand finally retracted, once again orbiting around his opponent protectively. Zaku muttered words unprintable under his breath. This guy was probably better at close-range combat than long-range. "Take this," he yelled, raising both hands and concentrating his power to maximum. Gaara was actually surprised by the force of the waves. It forced him off his feet and slammed him into the wall, and would have done him major damage if he did not have his gourd. It acted as a cushion and softened the impact while Gaara concentrated on sending a trail of sand to crawl up Zaku's legs and plug the two holes in his hand at the right time. Zaku, concentrating on the air blasts, didn't notice the sand. But once he stopped his attack, he sure became aware of it. Before he could react, however, the sand forced its way inside both his arms and remained plugged in there. He froze. The sensations of sand crawling up deeper inside his arms paralyzing him. "Stop," he said, voice shaking slightly. "Stop. I surrender." He fell to his knees as the sand began slowly sifting from his arms and Hayate proclaimed Gaara the winner. "I didn't even do anything," Gaara thought disdainfully, bending over to pick up his cork as the last bit of sand made its way back in the gourd. "Wimp. Welcome back, Gaara," Tamari said as her little brother teleported beside her. He gave her a small nod before turning his attention back to the arena below. "Me next, me next, me next." Lee prayed aloud. "Lee next, Lee next, Lee next." Guy prayed aloud. It finally settled on two names. Haruno Sakura vs Nara Shikamaru. EKA. Shikamaru. Ino cheered from the stands above. "Blow her away with your 16-hit combo." "Stupid woman," Shikamaru thought, annoyed. "I don't even have a 16-hit combo." He looked at the pink-haired girl. Didn't she and Ino used to be really good friends? He wondered briefly before his thoughts shifted to the fight. Man, why do I always have to be the one stuck with a girl? Shikamaru fights using a shadow binding technique. Sakura thought. What could possibly counter that? The only idea that came to mind that she would be able to do was. Both of them began to form seals and both began running toward their opponent. It's a one-hit-all-or-nothing battle. Sakura thought. I hope this works. She finished her jutsu just as Shikamaru's shadow began to expand toward hers. Now. Ninpu. Kujimane no Jutsu. Shikamaru's shadow was about to capture hers when Sakura disappeared in a technique Shikamaru affirmed as the Kawarimi no Jutsu. The replacement Sakura had decided to settle on was Aghhhhhh. Ino. Sakura appeared behind Shikamaru and was about to stab him with her kunai when she felt her body come to a stop. No way, she thought, mind racing. How did he? I can extend two shadows from my body at the same time. Shikamaru said, turning around, releasing Ino. And now, he said, making her drop the kunai in her right hand. You have no weapon. He raised his hand, which held a kunai and a shuriken. I really don't want to be the first one here who kills someone. Shikamaru said, switching them from his left hand to his right hand. So could you just give up? Sakura glared at him. She would rather get a face full of metal than surrender. But luckily, it never came to that. Hayate stopped the match and declared a winner before anything drastic could happen. Kakashi glanced down at Sasuke. His hands were clamped onto where the curse seal was and it was obviously paining him no matter how hard he tried to hide it. He bent down next to the boy's ear. If you don't go within the next 2 rounds, he whispered, I'm withdrawing you from the tournament and sealing it up. Sasuke spun around. No, he said firmly even as a new wave of pain shot through him, I'm not withdrawing. You sound like I'm actually giving you a choice. I'm not. Enough. Kakashi broke in. I'm tired of your selfishness. 2 more, and if you don't go, then you're leaving the exam. Sasuke fell silent and turned his glare on the scoreboard. The next 2 names better include his. I wanna go next. Kiba said, throwing his arms up in frustration. Come on you unwieldy machine. My name next. My name next. If I don't go soon all the strong guys will be gone and I'll be stuck with the weak ones. Kiba-kun, you shouldn't say that. Hinata said, hands raised. You'll offend. She trailed off, noticing that he wasn't paying attention to her. He was looking at the electronic board with a dazed expression on his face. Hinata turned around and saw that the machine had settled on 2 names. Hinata's eyes widened. She looked toward the arena where Uzumaki Naruto was already waiting. He was that blonde boy from the sand that Akamaru had been scared of. He's so cold, she thought. She did not need the Byakugan to see that his eyes did not radiate anything, no warmth, no emotions, nothing. I feel scared. Hinata, said Kiba uncertainly, if you want to give up, we won't think any less of you. No, I'll fight. Kiba led his teammate past, wondering if he was in the right for letting Hinata fight. He knew that if he pressed just a bit more, she would give in and give up the match. Please be okay, Hinata. Naruto stared at his opponent. It was that timid Hyuga girl he was sitting next to in the first exam 5 days ago. Crap, he thought. I hate fighting girls. The only girl I've ever fought who's didn't scream the minute I came near her is Tamari. And come to think about it, there's probably something wrong with her. God, I hate fighting girls. Once they were given the okay, both of them got into fighting stance and Hinata activated her Byakugan. Hey, she's doing the same style as that screw guy did. Neja screw. He quickly thought about everything he knew about the Byakugan, which was absolutely no help at all seeing as he knew absolutely nothing about it. The scrolls only mentioned the technique, it gave nothing useful about it besides the fact that the eyes allowed them to see the inner coil system. It provided nothing on how to counter it, how to use it against the user, nothing. The Hyuga family really did do a good job of keeping the secrecy of the Byakugan. The boy was in deep thought for a moment. Then, finally, he looked ready to concentrate on the fight. Neither of them looked like they were going to make the first move. They circled each other, always keeping themselves directly across from their opponent. Naruto was unwilling to strike a girl first, and Hinata's technique depended on the opponent's first move. Suddenly, they both moved toward each other at the same time, hands outstretched. Hinata's hand only made slight contact with Naruto's left hand, but that slight tingle was enough to send waves of electric pain through his arm. He sprang back, waving his hands like he was shaking off water. Hinata concentrated on his left hand with her Byakugan, and was surprised to see two different colored chakra in his hand and nowhere else in his body. Two-colored chakra was odd enough without the fact that the darker one had no source and looked as if it was sealed off in his left hand. She barely touched me and it hurts this much. Naruto thought. Looks like close combat is out. It's down to either genjutsu or ninjutsu. I don't want to kill her with those techniques. Can she see through an illusion with those eyes of hers? Wish I knew more about the Hyuga. He readied himself for the desired technique, but not before thinking and berating himself for stupidly attempting conversation with the Kyuubi the night before. Then he decided to stop yelling at himself. After all, he was in the middle of a fight and the Kyuubi had already given him a big enough lecture about talking to him the night before an important mission. Or in the fox's words, dumbass. The two fighters have not moved in the last few seconds. Both seemed to be contemplating their strategies after the first hit. It wasn't a question of whether Naruto would win or not, it was a question of how badly he was going to win. Maybe she was just overestimating his ability. There were only two things keeping Naruto from instant victory. One was that he didn't know anything about the opponent. Tamari knew that he had a fear of situations in which it seemed like he was winning, then being countered by an unknown technique. Naruto wasn't really good at thinking on his feet. Usually he had to have a surefire strategy before he even thought of attacking. It was irrational, but it was there. The second thing was that Naruto just couldn't hit girls. Or rather, he hated seeing a girl cry. When he was younger, he got into a friendly match with a neighborhood girl and she had bawled when he hit her just a bit harder than he intended. Then he was lectured endlessly by the two older siblings about the wrongs of striking a female. And so being adversely affected, traumatized, more like, at such a young age, he had deftly avoided any contact to the more sophisticated gender. Until now. Can't do that, might kill her. Naruto thought. Baki-sensei, why'd you have to teach me all those forbidden stuff? Kazekage-sama, why couldn't you have a scroll that covered basic techniques? He thought quickly about what kind of technique would work in this situation. He couldn't do his usual run-hit pressure points cause pain run back, because he wasn't sure about the Hyuga's defense against that, and then there was his deathly fear of making a girl cry. Guess I'll try it. Naruto thought nervously. He's a deep thinker. Hinata thought. His eyes moved to the lower left corner. He's thinking about how to beat me, but his bottom lip keeps jutting upward, indicating that there's a flaw in whatever tactic he wants to try. Personally, she thought that perhaps she should make a move, but she couldn't. If he suddenly came to life in the middle of her attack, she wouldn't be able to escape it unharmed. Her eyes weren't that good. Her only hope was to counter whatever he threw at her and wait until she could get near enough to fight with Juken. He didn't move, but chakra in his right hand began to fluctuate. She immediately focused on it as he slowly brought his right hand up so his palms were facing the ceiling. Chakra was collecting in his hand's weight. It was collecting outside of his hands. Outside. She focused her gaze on his outside body and was amazed to see chakra. Visible chakra enclosed in a small three-dimensional shape. No way, Kakashi thought. That looks almost like the Rasengan. There's no way. Suddenly, it began to stretch and contort. It contracted for a few moments before finally reaching its desired shape, a long, thin sharp-tipped collection of chakra extending from his palm. The chakra inside was swirling quickly, but the state remained constant. That's not the Rasengan, Kakashi thought. But it's close. How did he learn it? He grasped the base of it. For now, at least, it was steady. He had created this jutsu when one day, he just expelled chakra and decided to mold it into the shape of a sphere. All he got was a mound that looked like it came straight out of a child's play-doh set. But then he found that he could stretch and shrink it into whatever shape he wanted. He had tried getting it into sphere shape, but then the chakra would just disperse and he would create a small gust of wind instead of a sphere. I have to hurry, Naruto thought. I have to finish this up before my chakra runs out so I don't have to depend on the Kyubis. He charged. He swung the column of chakra around as if it were blade and aimed for the less sensitive areas of the body. She managed to dodge every swipe except one. That one brushed against her neck, and when she had touched it, no matter how much it looked like an icy blue icicle, it would burn. Her style of fighting is very interesting, he thought. But there's a flaw in her movement. Her feet do not move unless her hands stop. So if I try. He aimed his next swipe near her right foot, enough to send her falling off balance, but not enough to catch her off guard. Immediately after falling backwards, she balanced herself on her hands and kicked up with her left foot. To avoid that kick at such a close range, Naruto had to jump back, and that action was enough time for Hinata to get back on her feet and back in position. She's good, he thought grudgingly. She's very good. She made the fight for a while now. But I should probably end it soon. Damn, I just wanted to get her to surrender, but now it looks like I have to fight quick and dirty. The spear or sword of chakra bent and broke in half. One half retracted back in his right hand and the other half was absorbed into his left one. On second thought, it wasn't absorbed. It simply surrounded his hand, so there was a visible layer of chakra now on his left hand. If she had time to comprehend what happened in the next few seconds, she would have noted that he disappeared. All she knew was that 1 second, he was in front of her, and the next, she was lying on the ground. He was kneeling next to her, right hand wrapped around the base of her neck right above her collarbones and left hand raised, ready to strike. Stop the fight, Hayate said hurriedly. The match is over. The winner, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto stopped his hand in mid-strike and stepped back, releasing her neck in the process. Hinata sat up and rubbed her neck. It left no mark, but she could still feel his hand. Naruto gave her one last glance before walking back up where the rest of the sand ninjas were stationed. Kakashi watched him as he walked up the stairs step by step. He was different from the scared little boy who ran away without looking back. He couldn't help but wonder what Naruto's life would be like if he had never left. Hinata's team welcomed her back with relieved sighs. They were just glad she came back with minimal injuries. A few bruises around the neck were nothing compared to what she would have received if she fought someone like Neji. At least the Sand Nin wasn't aiming to kill her. The minute he rejoined the others, his surrogate sister immediately greeted Naruto with 2 punches to either side of his head. What's that for? He asked indignantly. That was for fighting against a girl, she said. And the other was for dragging the match out. It took you 10 minutes to finish a fight, ridiculous. Naruto sputtered something about how it wasn't his fault that he had to fight a girl and that matches take time before realizing that Temari would have just used another excuse to hit him on the head. She could never resist using the fact that he couldn't hit girls against him. I have to go next, Sasuke thought. Or else I'll have to leave. Lee was having thoughts along the same lines. It would be so great if Sasuke-kun and I could go in the next round. Lee thought, youth power fires bursting in his eyes. Since I can't fight Neji, or the 2 from the sand, I have to fight Sasuke-kun. If what Neji says about destiny is true, please let the board choose the 2 of us. The 2 names on the scoreboard read, Uchiha Sasuke vs Tsuchi-kin. Ah, Lee thought sadly. I wanted revenge on that sound guy then. I guess. Tsuchi-kin was that sound girl they had encountered in the forest. She wasn't all that. If she could get Kaino's Shintenshi no Jutsu, then she must be pretty stupid. She attacks with needles, Sasuke thought as another one whizzed by harmlessly. No problem. Haku gives me plenty of practice against them and her aim and strength are nothing compared to his. Plus, these eyes of mine can see them coming miles away. Kin gritted her teeth. He was having no trouble avoiding her needles, and the fact that she had to keep moving to avoid getting hit by his constant barrage of fists meant she had to cut the strings on the bells, thus her technique was rendered useless. Suddenly, Sasuke's hands began to form seals. Then she saw fire before she lost consciousness. Hayate quickly called an end to the fight before calling for medic nins. When Sasuke sat down, Naruto got a clear view of that mark on his neck. Orochimaru. Naruto thought. There was no doubt about it. That was the mark he had seen on that man's subordinates. Already, he was having doubts about what this mission was about, but he wouldn't question it. It was too late to question it by now. That Naruto guy seems a lot closer to those two from that sand team than he is to his own teammates. Shikamaru thought. Something's wrong here. And why are they all different ages? What are you mumbling to yourself about, Shikamaru? Ino asked. I'm saying that you need to concentrate more on how you're going to win the next match. Shikamaru said. You're the only one of all three of us who hasn't fought yet. And with the people left here, you're probably going to wind up in the hospital. Shows how much confidence you have in my abilities, Shikamaru. Ino replied, sticking her tongue out. But secretly, she was worried too.